You're watching America Trends. I'm Mary Burt Godwin, and we are chatting with Dr. Frieda Birnbaum. She's a research psychologist and psychotherapist and award-winning author of a couple books, I believe. One is about having children at the age of 60. She had twins at 60. But also, Doctor, I believe you have a book called Fear of Letting People Down. Is that correct?
Yes, I have a book that's going to be published soon. And it's really about your self direction and people. The more you do, the more you'll be criticized. To be aware of that, and it gets harder. So making it harder and making yourself uncomfortable eventually does make yourself comfortable. So it's a little bit about my path, being critiqued and being criticized. And by the way, you know, I always wanted to be in the media since I was 18, and I was told that I couldn't because it was like being a prostitute as far as my parents were concerned. No offense. But so I didn't bother doing it. And I had opportunities where people recruited me to do this. So that's another part of my book, the passages that people will relate to, that they went through as well. But here I am doing something that with people half my age, and I'm at a point now that I feel like I have so much to offer. I really don't care. I'm just blessed to be able to do this. So yes, I've written two books. I'm on my third book. I have a podcast, the Dr. Frieda Show. I have a show idea that I'm working on with my publicist about what we're going to discuss eventually. So the emotional prenup.
Yeah. First, I want to talk about a subject before we get to emotional prenup is the topic of gaslighting. Is that something that you talk about in the Fear of Letting People Down?
Yes. You know, gaslighting, be so careful with that, especially women. They're so complimented when somebody's jealous and they want to feel that that person really cares about them. Or watch out, you know, if your friends tell you, why aren't you calling anymore? Why don't we see you anymore? And your parents are wondering, what happened to you? Well, that person wants you to be codependent on them. And that's gaslighting. When you lose the essence of who you are, you actually don't even feel the same way you did before. People are saying you look different, you're acting different. And so when that happens, you have to stop and say, wait a minute, is this relationship that I'm in really worth me doing and giving up all of who I am? And this happens a lot of times. And often it's with the women who are controlled, but women often have to be responsible for it too. Because if they say, I want you to take care of me, I want you to do everything and ask every little question that they need to do on their own, well, that person's going to control you only because you're telling them to. So watch out the way you set up the relationship to begin with.
Do you see a lot of tie-in between individuals that utilize gaslighting techniques towards and behavioral traits such as narcissism?
Yes, narcissism is the real big flag, you know, the red flag. When a person is self-centered and has an inflated ego, well, that's where they need to stay. And a lot of time that has to do with their past, with how they were treated. And these people often feel inferior, just like bullies. They feel they have to prove themselves. So it's never enough. So watch out, because you're going to try to fix that person. But that person doesn't want you to fix them. They have their own agendas. So don't even bother.
So it's interesting, you know, so what do you think if a woman or a man feels like they're in a relationship and they are being controlled and gaslit and, you know, have in a relationship with a narcissist, they're probably still in love with that person. So it's a really, it's an internal struggle, I would think. So what are some of the tips that you would have for women or men that find themselves in that position and how to kind of get out of it?
Yes, it's such an important question because, first of all, if you confront that person and they tell you you're crazy, you're lying, you're making it up.
That's the gaslighting.
That's gaslighting. You're right. You're absolutely right. You know, you have to run as fast as you can because they've already gotten into the core of who you are and they feel that they can get away with it. And when that happens, you've already been in a place where that person has been emotionally abusive, that person has not respected you, that person has not included you in their life, such as introducing you to their family and friends, making future plans, keeping plans, going ahead and supporting your needs. All that is already happening behind the scene. And if you're allowing that and thinking that that person is going to change, well, you're with a different animal altogether. That person is not you. That person wants to be irrational. So the more rational you are, the more trapped you're going to be in that situation. They'll often cheat on you. They'll be alcoholics. They'll be drug addicts. I'm not kidding. The gamut of what's going on. And what you said is extremely important, is that you're already hooked into it. You're in love with that person. And sometimes when that happens, you can't step back. And we need to look and see, is that love that you have for that person really worth you giving up all of yourself? And people still do that.
So I guess my question too would be, if you are a friend or a loved one of someone that you see being gaslit and in a relationship that is dangerous, but they're not quite grasping it yet, you know, do you have tips for those people? Do you offer books? Do you offer the name of a psychologist, or, you know, what can you do as a friend?
Well, as you mentioned, it's very hard when somebody's in love. They'll protect the other person over you.
Right.
Because they themselves will be codependent already on that person. And so what you have to let them see is that if they take some time alone, can they get back to themselves? Because they're already used to having a bad self-esteem of themselves. Can that be elevated? And when that happens, when you have time alone, then you have time to build yourself up again. You have to be able to know that that kind of space is necessary, even if you are in a relationship, because usually that person who is gaslighting you does not want you to be separate than that person. They want you to do everything with them, all their schedules, whatever they're doing. They want to know where you are every minute, and don't be complimented by that again. So that space of self-fulfillment, of reaching out, go in a different direction, challenge yourself, and see if that fills you up. And that can be the answer to moving away, because you're right, it's very difficult for a person to move away from that
relationship. Okay, so before I let you go, we have to wrap up soon, but talk about this term emotional prenup that I read about.
Yes, sir. Emotional prenup, you know, I always wondered in my practice of more than 30 years, what is going on here? You know, this financial prenup, I never had that. That means that you have to protect yourself in case something happens. And by the way, if you know you're going to get a lot of money, maybe you won't even mind if something happens. So it seemed very toxic in a relationship. So I thought, what about this prenup of trying to fix the relationship so you don't need the financial prenup? How about looking and seeing what the problems are going to be to begin with? People come to me, young couples come to me, but they're already having the problems. But what about the problems that do happen later on? Do you believe in monogamy? Do you have any secrets? Have you had any kind of sexual changes? I'm not kidding. These things
it's good to talk about before, because, you know, everything's hunky-dory in the beginning, and then, you know, kids come and life comes and midlife comes.
Love
and
is
then you're
wonderful.
Like,
that person couldn't be a better person.
Yeah, so we've got to wrap up here. Dr. Frieda, thank you so much for taking time with us today. People can find you at drfrieda.com. And looks like you've got a lot of books out for people to check out. Thank you so much for empowering women to walk their own path and reinvent themselves at any age. Dr. Frieda, thank you so much. And you're watching America Trends. We will be right back right after this. I'm going to reinvent myself over the break.